Your hair looks great. Did you get that? That could be a cute thing in the video.
To be an ally, I think, is to be able to use your privilege to help a group that is underprivileged.
I think being an ally is knowing what privileges that you have in a variety of aspects and identities. The privilege that comes, or the oppression that comes with certain identities that you have. And I think allyship is about knowing that, but also knowing how to use those privileges, that space that you navigate within those privileges to advocate for different causes, but also not serve as a spokesperson. I think it's really important to speak from your experiences only, even if that is from a place of privilege, but knowing how to do that to further the success or the well-being of others and yourself as well.
Privilege is just like, there's certain things that like a group of people will have to face that another group of people will not have to face. And so to have an ally is to have someone who will like step in and like help you during those times when you need that help.
One way that I've been explaining, or that I have found to explain privilege to most of the time Greek individuals who I interact with the most, is like if you don't have to think about an identity every day, then you have privilege. So I don't wake up every day and I don't walk down the sidewalk and I'm like, I'm white and I'm walking down the sidewalk. I don't think that. But when I am walking down the sidewalk or I'm getting a cup of coffee, I'm like, I'm really gay and I'm getting a cup of coffee, or I know that everyone knows I'm really gay. And so I think that a lot of times when privileged individuals, certain individuals will be talking to me, if they're straight or cisgender, it's very easy for them to forget how much courage it takes to exist in my identities, and B, takes to even talk about them to the people who are oppressing me. And so when it's shut down right away, it makes it really hard to like either make progress or even come back again and try again.
Yeah.
So definitely.
What I think it means to be an ally is educating yourself and also lending an ear to the person who is oppressed or is going through an experience. And what I mean, like, with education, like, actually, like, actively reading up on things, Googling things that you're curious about, rather than just, like, blatantly asking somebody to explain their oppression to you. And I also think, like, with understanding is, like, not making everything about you. So, like, asking, I guess, like, understanding, like, where this person is coming from and how they got to this point and why they feel the way they feel, instead of always counteracting what they're saying. So.
And to me, that's the biggest important part, is just listening and making sure that you're there for them, and not saying that yourself you're an ally, because you can't really consider yourself an ally until that community like recognizes you.
Whenever I think of allyship, the first word I think of is listening, and then after that is action. So I think a lot of times when people hear other people's experiences, their first thought is to use their own identity and compare it, and then say, well, because my identity is this way, I don't agree with yours, or maybe you just need to look at it this way. But people don't consider the fact that all our different identities change how we move through space and how experiences affect us. So just really listening and empathizing versus sympathizing, like I can't express how important that is. And especially, I'll just speak specifically from my experience at the RSVP Center and being a survivor myself, and people just looking at you and being like, oh, that's so sad. Like, so sorry that you've experienced that. And I know a lot of my friends who are people of color, when it's like, oh, I've experienced this type of oppression because of the way I look, it'll be like, oh, that's so sad. Instead of then looking and being like, well, wow, let me put myself in that person's shoes and let me think about how I would feel if that happened to me. And then going from there, instead of just being like, that's so sad, just being like, wow, I'm going to move, like, now that I know this experience, every step, every action I take now is going to be different, because I don't want other people to feel that and also understanding, though, at the same time that empathy does not equal understanding. That just because you can empathize with somebody, and you can, if you have the ability to empathize, which is pretty hard to do in general, just as a human being, but then knowing that that doesn't mean you understand them. That just means that you're giving them the time and the respect to actually really process their experience.
To me personally, especially towards my community and like identifying as a transgender man, and I can only speak from my own personal experiences, an ally to me is someone who gifts their hands and says, please use them in whichever way, shape, or form will serve you best, rather than coming in with a set shit, or a set, could try that again, rather than coming in with a set, like, list of things that,
Like an agenda?
yeah, an agenda of things that my community needs to do to better themselves. If they're coming saying, let me work on your agenda, let me listen to you and give you my hands to serve you. Does that make sense? I think the times I see that most is in everyday conversations. When I know that there are people who are educated by my words specifically about the trans community, and we're having a conversation, and one of our other friends kind of, says, well, it doesn't matter, pronouns aren't important here. Or, it always kind of puts the pressure on me to have that conversation, which I do, but I know that there are other people around me who will take that pressure off of me rather than me having to be the token trans person talking about trans experiences.
Yeah. Do you think
It makes me feel as if everything regarding the trans community is on me, and that I don't have other people who aren't a part of my community helping further that. And
Right.
And it makes me feel as if all the work that I do to educate is just useless. Like
Yeah.
all the times that I go and say, like, this is important for your work and this is important for you to put at the forefront of you educating, being a mentor, or just being a person on campus trying to give other students a good experience here, and it makes me feel as if you were just sitting there not listening to anything that I had to say.
Right.
It makes me feel like the tools that I'm giving you are just like being left in the basket.
Definitely.
One homecoming, I was walking through town with one organization I was part of, and we were going to see House Decks. So I actually saw some people I knew there, and then I actually lost my group, so I would walk around by myself. And then just hearing some Greek life saying, like, oh, like, who's this wetback and stuff like that. It's really kind of uncomfortable, like, seeing that, like, or hearing these things, and especially, like, I'm part of a Greek organization myself. I don't understand why I'm so much different than who these Greeks are in this Greek town.
Well, just recently, because it's fresh in my mind, I published a letter about some experiences that I've had in Greektown, being called LGBTQ hate speech, and a lot of my close friends were very supportive, and very uplifting with the experiences that I have and the knowledge and the education that I wanted to give from that. However, some of the individuals who are a part of the group that did call me that name attempted to falsify what I said, or instead of validating my experience, instead jumped straight to defending their group, and fighting the overgeneralization of their group. And I think that instead of saying, okay, I'm so sorry that you experienced that, like, how can we be better? How can I challenge my fellow men or fellow Greeks or whoever the oppressor may be? Instead of saying that first, but it's not all of us.
You're right.
It's like we're defending the people who are oppressing you, instead of asking how, even though I may not be the one who's oppressing you directly, how can I challenge people around me to not do that? Because even if you're not doing it directly, if you're not standing up, you're contributing and you're oppressing other individuals. And I think that instead of taking ownership over, like, what I can do, a lot of people tend to just defend people. Maybe not outright, or they don't see it outright, but they are. And in that way, they're invalidating the experiences of oppressed individuals.
It makes me feel like that person has listened to me continuously, and not just taken my words for granted, or taken me in general for granted. It's very, very validating and supportive.
It helps your life experiences, your school experiences, when you're surrounded by allies and by people like that, because at times it can be difficult to be a person of an underrepresented group living in America, or going to school at a university that is predominantly not your group, So it makes life a lot easier, a lot more pleasant and happy when you have people that you know are supportive of you, and are not afraid to stand up for others to stand up for those who may face discrimination and problematicness of others. So.
I think, and from what I've heard and from what I understand, like an ally is something that is given to you. So until you display that type of behavior, like interrupting language or interfering with racism or like sexism and domestic violence and stuff like that, like you cannot call yourself an ally because you're not doing the work to stop this harmful behavior. So yeah, I think ally and allyship is something that's given to you by the people who are experiencing that type of oppression.
I think if you claim to be an ally, I think the most important thing about that is actually doing stuff about it. Like I said, like standing up for others and taking steps to actually learn about other people's struggles and understand them. And if you're not actually like doing those things, and I don't think you really can claim to be an ally, I guess.
I think with my experiences being an LGBTQ individual and having people claim allyship and to see so much inaction from that person or those people is very frustrating, because you can be accepting. I think there are people who are accepting of LGBTQ individuals, and that's great, but that doesn't mean that you're an ally.
Right.
It means that you don't yell hate speech at me, which is great. Thank you for that. But there's more to it than just not hating me. So that's made me think about it differently. Also, being a white individual, surrounding different racial relations events on campus and also in St. Louis has really made me challenge myself and how I view my actions as a white individual, trying to use my privilege within the spaces that I navigate. I've learned a lot about that, and I'm still learning, and how to be supportive and actionable to different communities.
One of the things that I have trouble with being an ally is interrupting language. And like that's like when people like, and like particularly with like close friends and family members who have been conditioned to think that this be like that problematic behavior is okay. So it's like, you know, having that courage to like say, hey, what you said was not right and this is why it's not right. And sometimes potentially like you'll lose a friend because of that, but like that behavior that they, you know, like display perpetuates harmful events that can later happen. And so I think that's like sometimes like what I have trouble with being an active ally or a good ally is interpreting, or like not interpreting, but interrupting language.
Yeah.
So.
You brought a family.
So I think it's about always learning and growing, because you know you can learn a lot from your own experiences, but whatever you don't have, you can only know secondhand, which is important also. Like I will never know what it's like to be any identity but my own. And I should never speak in a way that may seem like I'm talking from that experience, because I can never talk about those experiences. I really try hard not to speak about secondhand experiences. Even if individuals, like friends, have told me that they've experienced something, I try really hard not to talk about those experiences because they're not mine.
Right. That's a great point.
And that's very hard to do because I have this knowledge, but it's not mine.
Right.
And it's not my job or my right to commodify those experiences to get myself gain and things like that.
And so don't speak on their behalf. Speak like from your behalf, but make sure like you're also supporting what they're thinking.
It's a really good
I guess I'm going to keep saying it again. It's just listening and then having action based on what you learned. You know, no one's going to get mad at you if you never experienced something and you never heard a concept before, you never heard of a type of oppression, and therefore you didn't do anything about it your whole life. But once you know about it, and once you know that it's a problem and you know that it's affecting people on a day-to-day basis, make that change how you now are going forward. be aware of that. Don't be afraid to tell people about it. Of course, practice self-care and don't just go around being like, that's wrong and that's wrong and that's
Right.
not ethical and that's not okay and that's oppressive. But like, don't be afraid to do it when you can. And also, again, just when people come to you and say that this is happening to them, just being very, very intentional about every interaction you have with them, and also being intentional about the actions that you take and making sure that you're not acting like you're representing a whole group of people, but that you're just there to express some of their concerns that they've given to you. Most of my experience with allyship is doing my best to be a learning ally, because I mean, I'm white, I'm straight, cisgendered. I got a lot of privilege going on here. Where I've experienced someone being an ally to me has a lot to do with being a woman and also being a survivor of sexual assault. And the most important thing, and this just goes for all different types of allyship, is just listening and believing and then supporting. We have a whole...
Actions speak louder than words. If you're gonna like talk the talk, make sure you walk the walk as well. Because if not, it's like, what was the whole point of all that?
Right.
Being an ally is awesome, so you should be an ally.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.